What's going on, everybody? Yeah, here with a little month follow-up for all you hardline haters and lovers alike. It's been a month. Game is still fun. There's a patch, or probably one patch, coming around either end of this month or early next month, according to Visceral. So that's kind of nice that the game is still getting support and hasn't been dropped yet. For the game itself, though, it's still fun. Still having a lot of fun. Still having some crazy moments. Mainly because there's no real commitment you have to invest in. I mean, everything you need and want you can easily get by really just playing a few hours, getting enough points, and then getting enough money, and there you go. You're good to go. The only thing that may seem remotely grindy is probably the perk system, which I think needs a little bit of work. But that's neither here nor there. It just depends on what they plan to do with this next patch coming up. It seems like mainly a balance patch, but we'll see what else they have in store. So yeah, it's still fun, mainly because it seems to be two camps of players, or two camps of people that either love or hate this game. Those that love it, more often than not, probably didn't play too much Battlefield 4, or didn't actually get Battlefield 4, it seems like. Or if they did get Battlefield 4, it really didn't fulfill what they were going for, pun intended. And to add on to that point about Battlefield 4, it seems as though it was released for next-gen consoles as Battlefield 3 on PS3 and Xbox 360 couldn't hold a candle to the graphics and, I guess, performance that was had on PS4 and Xbox One. So I think Battlefield 4 purchases were definitely stellar for the console. I mean, I'm sure they were relatively high for the PC as well, but I think the bulk of it came from the console players as well. So, and then the other camp seems to have jumped on the Battlefield 4 train and has been riding it for a while. For those of us, or those veterans that ended up picking up 3, years ago, such as myself, I didn't actually go for 4 because I thought it was going to be essentially just Battlefield 3 plus. It wasn't anything too different that I needed to have outside of maybe the Levolution stuff and the maps and whatnot. But a lot of that stuff seemed really gimmicky, so I didn't bother. With Hardline, though, it's definitely a refreshing take on the franchise. Definitely a different type of feel to Battlefield in general. I mean, it's closer to a Twitch shooter or like arcade shooter, but it still has that Battlefield feel to it, in that you still have to play the objective and you can't run around just racking up kills, as I mentioned in my first impressions video. So it's still there, still Battlefield to its core, but I think it was marketed poorly in that it seemed to be purporting the single player a little bit too much, and I think a lot of people focus on the single player a lot and didn't really give the multiplayer a chance because they probably just prefaced it with their own assumptions of 3 and 4, which I don't think is very fair, but I guess that's just the nature of the beast when it comes to big name reviewing. At any rate, it's really fun. I'm definitely digging the condensed format. It's a lot easier to just get into the game and get going instead of having to worry about getting wrecked by a tank or something like that. And I think that's something they were probably really working towards, because in 3 and 4, there's usually 2 wars going on. You have the war between the armor, which is the tanks and the jets and APCs and what have you, and then you have the infantry war. And so it's really a tactical annoyance when you run into a situation that you can't remedy, i.e. being an operator or medic or even a sniper, running into enemy armor. I mean, you're pretty much boned. You're not going to take out that tank unless you're an engineer or you have air support or another tank behind you. So there's just no way you're going to be able to deal with those situations by yourself. And I think Hardline tries to alleviate that a little bit by allowing people to get the Battlefield pickups, RPGs, smalls, stuff like that. And even some of the grenades are pretty good, like the incendiary grenades are pretty good against enemy armor. And the enemy armor in Battlefield Hardline isn't too tanky. Like the trucks and the personnel carriers, the spawn trucks and whatever else, those aren't too tanky. Those can be taken out with a couple grenades, maybe some incendiaries. And I think pretty much everything is destroyed in one hit by either the RPG or the small. Small is for sure one hit kill. RPG depends where you hit it. But I mean, the point is that you don't have to worry about being boned when you get into a situation like that. So that's pretty nice. And like I said, it's definitely the middle ground between arcade shooter and military tactical FPS, which is kind of nice. It also caters to casuals and hardcores alike, which is, I mean, it's interesting. I don't think that's neither here nor there. You're always going to have the casual and hardcore, type of situation going down. But I think it's really about the investment. You don't have to invest too much time in grinding your ranks out in this game. And rank doesn't really mean much in Hardline as it does in maybe 4 or even 3 because those ranks are tied to weapons. Now with Hardline, I would say 80%, 85% of the weapons are tied to money. So if you're doing well in each game, like you're gonna, max out and gear out your stuff pretty quickly here. So that's pretty nice. And I think the biggest point for me, or the biggest benefit to me, is the matches are fairly short and intensive. Even though the matches are really short for the most part, they don't usually last longer than 20 minutes for most maps or even most modes. It's very, very hectic and intensive, and you're doing so much so quickly. It seems like you're in a 30, 40-minute game when in actuality the game's been over. And I mean, for those who are still on the fence or abhorrent and severely against this game, it seems to be that Battlefield's kind of on a decline until Battlefront 3 comes out, at least. I think people are, on the whole, maybe getting a little bit bored, maybe a little bit jaded somewhat with the game, and that seems fine, and that's fair enough. I mean, the game isn't really supposed to be here, till the ends of time, so I mean, we've always got to have something, the next installment around the corner, so I think that's a valid point to feel. But it seems like, as I mentioned, there's a lot of emphasis with the reviews and people who have been looking at the game on the single player, and I don't think that's doing justice to the Battlefield franchise as a whole, which has always been a multiplayer focused game. I mean, yeah, we have 3 with the single player and 4 with the single player, but like I said, the marketing was just terrible. Like, I don't know why they marketed this game as some revolutionary single player experience when it really wasn't. It's pretty run of the mill, action junkie, action thriller type thing. So it was nothing new, nothing special. I mean, it was definitely cinematic and fun, but on the whole, I don't think they should have marketed it that way. And that's not to say that the multiplayer in Hardline is by any means something we haven't seen before in either Battlefield 3 or 4. But I think it speaks to the game itself and where the longevity is concerned is the multiplayer. I mean, you're not going to be sitting here replaying the single player and over again. There's no real incentive to do so. So I think a lot of those reviews focusing on the single player fail to address what else the multiplayer brought. I mean, it's not like the multiplayer completely turned Battlefield upside down and made it a totally different thing. Not by any means, but I think it was still worth mentioning some of the finer points of the multiplayer, which would be the modes and other weapons, battle pickups, the vehicles, etc., etc. I think a more in-depth look at the multiplayer itself probably would have informed gamers a little bit more on the subject of the multiplayer and not have it written off as a reskin, as many have been calling it. So, in that vein, I think that the game was done an injustice, but that's not to say that it's something completely different that we have not seen before. I think it's really just a different choice and a choice between Battlefield 4 or Hardline, it seems at this point. And like I said, I mean, Battlefront 3 is around the corner, so this is really just a choice. If you have 3 and you have a PC, there's no reason to buy Battlefield 4 because it's pretty much just more of the same. More weapons, more guns, different maps, evolution, sure, but it's anything revolutionary. Just like Hardline is anything revolutionary. It really comes down to what your tastes are and what you're looking for in the game. So if you're looking for more grind, it seems to be you go for Battlefield 4. If you're looking for more fast pace, get in, get out, have a good time, you're gonna go for Hardline for sure. So in that vein, I think that's really what the core of the issue is between people that love and hate this game or on the fence. At any rate, game is still fun. It's a non-serious game, and I think that's how they should have played up the non-seriousness of it. And I think Visceral made a few weak attempts at doing that with some of the Easter eggs, such as the couch, which is oddly getting nerfed, and some of the special reload animations that happen. I think 1 in 10,000. There's 1 in 10,000 chance that it will happen. So I mean, even the premise of the game is ridiculous. And you have, police officers and law enforcement readily going out and killing suspected criminals. They're not even convicted, suspected criminals, taking them out with guns and whatnot. So, I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous. Just based on fantasy. So for those, assuming that it's supposed to be some Battlefield, realism type thing, and it's supposed to be very, very serious, akin to 3 and 4, then they're going to be sorely mistaken. And I think that's the fault of EA and probably marketing, as I've mentioned, probably too much. So, just take it as is. It's just a ridiculous game. That's really what it is. It's a ridiculous game and a ridiculous premise for ridiculous things happening, all the while being fun and hilarious. So I think that's the most important part. And it's just a nice distraction and a pacifier for Battlefront 3. The trailer came out yesterday, and I'm hyped. Everybody is stoked for it. So this is definitely going to be a nice little band-aid until Battlefront drops. But barring that, I don't think that premium should have been implemented for this game specifically, because there's only going to be 7 months between now and the release of Battlefront 3. And so it seems inconceivable to me that they will release 4 expansions with the premium package in 7 months, when it's literally, usually it takes around a year or two to get all 4 of those out, out of Battlefield 3 and 4. So I'm not really sure what they have planned or how they're going to do this whole premium thing. I really hope it isn't rushed, and that they keep it to a year or 2 year cycle, even with Battlefront 3 around the corner. Because Battlefront 3 is it's going to dwarf everything Battlefield related. It's going to dwarf everything. So there's no way to avoid, the masses just jumping on the Battlefront train. So I think they should take their time and make it as polished as possible, and actually have some fresh ideas out there, so it doesn't end up being, just some seemingly cash grab, because I don't think that's really what it is. It's definitely a good game. It's not an amazing game, not a great game by any means, but it's certainly a good game in its own right, and it certainly merits a lot of fun. And for the amount of time played, you don't have to, like I said, you don't have to commit too hard to it, which is kind of nice. So, essentially, if you have Battlefield 3, or if you don't have Battlefield 4 or Hardline, but you've played or have Battlefield 3, I suggest you get Hardline just in the meantime, because I think getting 4 right now would be a big mistake, in that, there's a lot of time and commitment based with 4, unlocking everything. You got the premium, all 4 premium expansion packs are already out, they're already going. There's like a million guns, million attachments. There's just a lot of things going on with 4 that I don't think is really worth the investment of time. So I think Hardline's just a nice little distraction, a nice little game, to get you going, get you that Battlefield fix. Or you keep playing 3. That's definitely something that's not a bad idea at all. I think there's plenty of service going on with 3. Back to Hardline, it's a fun game. There's nothing I can really say about it. There's a few things that may need to get addressed, namely with weapon balance and some of the other mechanical things, but on the whole, it's pretty fun. I guess one real balance issue that really needs to be addressed is the ability for cars to regenerate the trunk upgrades, because there's no point even playing Hotwire anymore, because you're going to get blasted, to hell and back with the damn rocket launcher by some douchebag camping their vehicle, sitting somewhere on the side. So, Hotwire is still fun for the most part, but it's just a clusterfuck of rockets and whatnot. And the best modes right now are probably going to be Heist, Blood Money, and Conquest for sure. Crosshair and Rescue they need some serious work. They're very, very wonky and buggy, and a lot of the balancing with that is kind of ridiculous. And on that note, I guess there's supposed to be an esports competitive scene with Hardline, which makes zero sense. I'm not even understand why they're trying to do that. They're not going to go anywhere with that unless they pour money into this, and Lord knows they're not going to do it, especially with, like I said, with Battlefield 3 around the corner. So that would just be a big, big waste of time. And I think Hardline should have just been a new IP altogether. Drop the Battlefield tag, just make it, some new IPs using the Frostbite 3 engine. I think it would have been. They probably would have garnered more respect instead of just people jumping on the back going, "Ooh, it's going to be just a reskin of 4, blah blah blah," which makes no sense to me, because if that's the case, then you could say Battlefield 4 is just a reskin of Battlefield 3, just with Levolution, a few more weapons, maybe a few more vehicles and different maps in the whole premium package. that whole argument of so-and-so is a reskin of so-and-so never really made sense to me. I mean, yeah, they're going to share similar assets and similar aspects of the game itself, but clearly it's going to be its own game in its own right. And if it really was a reskin, it would be very easy to tell. So I'm thinking a lot of people who said Battlefield 4 is a reskin of 3, and B, who said Hardline is a reskin of 4, have not played the game, or just talking out of their ass and reading Reddit or some shit. So honestly, that whole argument just makes no sense to me. And how about you actually play the game before you actually try and build some shitty straw man argument when that's not even the case at all. At its core, it's a fun game. I mean, it's mediocre, but it's a really fun game. And what's wrong with the fun game? I mean, I feel like everybody, or a lot of people, or maybe just some people, are just jumping on this whole train of every game that comes out needs to be AAA, needs to be, so-and-so quality, blah, blah, blah. Like, why can't the game is fun? Why can't people just accept the fact that the game is fun for some? It may not be fun for some others. I don't really understand why there's this whole you have to agree with my opinion, you have to hate on this game just like me. Sure, you can voice your opinion and let it go, but why are you on a crusade trying to ruin the fun of others that are obviously having fun with the game? So I never understood that, never will understand that, but it is what it is. I like in this game to getting Little Caesars pizza as compared to some gourmet pizza. Little Caesars pizzas are probably the best mediocre pizza you ever can have in your life, and you always go back, even if it's not the best pizza there is. It's still good regardless. So I kind of see Hardline as that, the Little Caesars of the Battlefield franchise. So if you're in the market for a new little distraction or a game Battlefield related, definitely pick up Hardline. Don't bother with the premium. I think that would be a waste of money, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I would definitely wait until at least the first two expansion packs come out to make sure you're actually getting some worthy content instead of jumping on that bandwagon. And yeah, so thanks for watching and listening. I'll definitely be back later on, probably with some more Battlefront stuff, because I think Battlefield is going to be a little dry for the next 6 or 7 months, but we definitely have plenty of other games to hold us over until then. So please subscribe with the links below, and peace out.